My name is Mohilner. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California who's living with bipolar disorder. I work for an organization I love called the Life Adjustment Team, and I'm also in private practice for myself. This video is going to be on the effect of drugs and alcohol and people with bipolar disorder. I was asked by Team Thrive, which is Thrive with Bipolar Disorder on Facebook, to really talk about why. There are 3 questions. One is why we take drugs and alcohol. The others is what is it doing to our brains as people with bipolar disorder. And the third question that I'll answer is how it affects our medication. So I don't have personal experience with being on drugs or alcohol. I was diagnosed as a teenager before I could go that route, but I do have experience working with people, and this is going to come from my experience working with people as well as my knowledge and training as a therapist, just so you know. So why do we as people with bipolar disorder often turn to drugs and alcohol for an escape? The easy answer is we don't want to experience depression. That's the easiest, most simple answer. But part of the other answer is that as people living with bipolar disorder, many of us have trauma, emotional wounds, emotional things that we aren't equipped, we don't have the tools yet to deal with, so we turn to drugs and alcohol. So let's talk about what they do. So as people with bipolar disorder, I want you to think of mania. We're going to talk about mania and depression for a second. So on the manic swing, most people tend to really enjoy their mania unless it brings tremendous agitation, which is very common for people with bipolar disorder type 2, to experience tremendous anger and rage and agitation during hypomania. But for those who experience bipolar 1, it's very pleasurable, and we want to stay in this place for as long as we possibly can before it peaks and it becomes a nightmare. So what happens is when we're in that state of mania where it's building and building and pleasure and it just keeps building, our brains, so I'm getting into the second part of what is it doing to the brain. During mania, or I'll backtrack a second. The average human being uses 7 to 10% of their brain capacity on a daily basis. Now, during mania, during full-blown mania, we are using at least 70% of our brain capacity. Meaning, our brain, like if you looked at it on a spectrum, it doesn't matter, all that stuff doesn't matter, it's just scientific terms. If you looked at it, it would be on fire active. It would be incredibly active, at least 70% during full-blown mania. So, the average is less than 10%. So what are we doing? We are exhausting our brains during mania. So when we go into depression and we can't function and we can't think or feel or anything like that, or when we're in that place, that's called recovery from this tremendous mania. So what do people with bipolar disorder often do? We can't tolerate the recovery time known as depression. We can't tolerate it, so we take drugs to try to get back into that manic place. And the first time it may work. But there's a trick with drugs, is your first high is the highest high you will ever have. Your next high is only this high. I hope you can see my hands, I don't know. But the whole point is you will never get as high as that first high. And so we're trying, as people with bipolar disorder, we're just trying to not be in this recovery stage. But what we're doing when we take drugs is we end up so we've already just really fried our brains, like really made our brains work in ways that it's designed to work for a very short period of time, but we're pushing it. And so we're basically killing our brain every time we use drugs. And mania does it a little bit, but the drugs continue to kill the brain over and over and over again as we do whatever it takes to avoid depression. So that's what's going on in our brains, is the drugs fry our brain. Alcohol, it basically does the same. People with bipolar disorder tend to drink a lot, not to get drunk, but to contain the mania. Because it only makes the depression worse, but we drink to contain mania. But alcohol kills brain cells too. So either way, drugs and alcohol are just frying our brains, and even more so than the average human being, because we naturally fry our own brain. That kind of sounded silly, but it is what it is. So let's talk about the effects of drugs on medication. So we've been given this medication whose sole purpose is to help us best function in our lives. And if we take any other substance, we completely throw off that substance, either causing it to become lethal to us, which people die all of the time because of this, or causing it to not work and causing us to become out of control symptomatic. It's not a good idea to be taking, it's not a good idea for anyone to take drugs, but it's really not a good idea for people with bipolar disorder to take drugs. And the same goes for alcohol. If you mix alcohol with your meds, you could kill yourself. It's just the reality. Is you mix any chemical with your medication that is not a natural food substance, that has no effect on your brain chemistry, and you can kill yourself. That's what I got for you folks. And I really hope for anybody who's needing help to stop, whether it be their addiction or stop their usage or abuse of drugs, that you will find local help in your area, because it's time to stop, because it'll kill you. And I'll see you soon. Bye.